This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. This week we are continuing with Sandy Betts after some technological difficulties last week prevented us from completing the things that we wanted to talk about. But I'm going to start with some of last week's comments in regards to Darlene Ferrin. We did have CD, a commenter on YouTube, who asked if there was any connection between Darlene Ferrin and Stanford, which of course, I did pass that question on to Sandy. Also, he wanted to know from her, she, I'm not sure who CD is. Anyways, wanted to know whether or not Darlene was pregnant. Now, I know that this is something that has floated around the internet and, of course, had been a rumor or question. And so I put that forth to Sandy. And what she'd explained to me is that she was in possession of the autopsy report of Darlene Ferrin, and there was no mention of a pregnancy. On top of that, she had recently had a baby. So chances were that she was not pregnant at the time the Zodiac killed her. Today, we're going to start back off a little bit from the beginning and try to recap everything real quick. So I'd like to welcome Sandy Betts by phone today. Are you there, Sandy?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I started out here with this lovely, lovely picture of you standing next to this. It looks like he's a driver in some type of a race. Can you tell us about that picture or that night?
Well, I was a trophy queen a few times, maybe three, at the Vallejo Speedway during 1968 and 69. And he was the winner of that particular race. I have another picture, but we didn't need to show two pictures of me being trophy queen, but that may have drawn my stalker to me. I have no idea when or
I would say so. I'd stalk you if I was a pervert.
Thank you.
You are beautiful.
I was also a waitress. Thank you so much. I was a waitress though, also in the popular clubs at that time. One of which was the Coronado Inn, where we know that Darlene Ferrin hung out. So I probably waited on her, but didn't really know her personally. And I also went to Terry's restaurant where she worked, but I really don't remember her at all. The only
That's a long time ago.
We had in common was dating the same Vallejo police officer, Buzz Gordon.
Gotcha. So I kind of commented a little bit on this particular time frame and my excerpt. You can please tell me if I'm wrong, but I wrote down 1969 was a year of heavy drugs, guns, and counterfeiting schemes surrounding a prolific nightlife of partying and criminal activity. How does that wrap it up?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Yes.
So the mob influence is at large in most major cities still at this time, with connections to the CIA and underground syndicates. The newspapers are relevant in messaging systems for these individuals while monopolizing on the news that they actually create. So I find that they almost kind of run hand in hand. The news is making money off of the crimes that are being reported, and the criminals are using the newspapers to get messages back and forth to individuals. I started off, let's see. Oh, come on. Work. Okay.
I can hear you.
I was trying to advance my slide and I wasn't on that screen, so I needed to get to that screen real quick, but I did. So basically I had tried to map out some of the information you'd given me to kind of make it a little more understandable and clearer for folks to understand what was occurring and happening with you. So I have listed the mystery man is Honcho, possibly an Anthony or AKA Tony. You're not quite sure of his name, correct?
I was told by 3 different people that his name was Tony or Anthony, but no one seems to know what his last name is. And his picture has been on the internet for a long, long time. You would think someone would have said, "Oh, I know who he is. I know his last name," but no one has.
Right. Now, I know that he frequented the places that you worked, correct? I mean, you've waited on this individual.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yes,
so
absolutely, yes.
him becoming a stalker is not out of the question, since you know that you have seen him and you know that he made his rounds to wherever it was that you were at. Some of the places, can you tell us
Yes.
some of the places you feel like he might have followed you or stalked you?
Well, for sure, it started in Vallejo, 1969. I would say it was around March. Excuse me.
And this was Don Porter's roommate, correct?
Pardon me?
Was he Don Porter's roommate, or was that Robert Hernandez?
Yeah. Honcho, I believe, was Don Porter's roommate, because I remember vaguely what the guy looked like and his real weird voice. I would say that there's a very good chance Honcho was the roommate of Don Porter in Vallejo, yes.
And Don was the person that was wrapped up in that counterfeiting ring.
Yes, he was caught for that. He was lighting.
Now, was he what?
Lady 20. He was. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. He was lighting lady cigarettes in a bar that I had just leased, and the lease was over by about 2 weeks when he had gone in there and was lighting lady cigarettes with $20 bills. Well, the feds were actually following him because they were already suspicious of him and the counterfeit ring at that time. And
was that
so
Don?
They busted him there. Yeah,
that was Don.
Porter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so is
Yeah.
Don related to the counterfeiting ring that came out of Chicago, or was that a different ring?
Well, the only thing that he told me, he didn't give me a lot of information. The only thing he did tell me was 2 of the men, this was after he was caught, 2 of the men came from Chicago. They brought the plates, the printing plates to make the money, or to print the money. The plates came from 2 guys from Chicago.
Okay. So and you've been to his home.
There.
I think we touched on this a little bit last week. You've been to Don Porter's home. That's where he had the conversation with who you believe was Honcho, that got upset when he mentioned Dee's name. And subsequently, you guys then went to what you believed was Darlene Ferrin's house to pick up or drop something off before you headed out to San Francisco for another pickup or drop off, correct?
Exactly correct, yes.
Okay. So some of the things that I have written down here that you had indicated that this person is possibly responsible for were things like knocking bricks out of your what was that, a fence or a wall at your house?
Yes, that's a wall that was right next to the sidewalk. And I couldn't understand why these bricks were getting knocked out, but it would happen whenever I would say something online. So apparently he was reading the post, which was on zodiackiller.com. And I would say things like, this guy's a coward and so on and so forth. But it would upset him, apparently, because things would happen. Things would be destroyed around my house.
When you came back.
Shortly after.
And you've seen him in your backyard many times as well, correct?
Oh, yes. He was in my backyard many times. I mean, I even got his footprints in the mud, which were large footprints and very, very wide. They measured 13 inches and about 4.5 to 5 inches wide, which that's a pretty good sized foot.
That's like a triple E or something. He's like as wide as he is long.
Yeah. It was very,
Is he
very,
the
very
one that
wide.
is he the one that followed you? Do you know, is he the one that followed you back where you had to stop police officers because he was following you and being an aggressive driver? And then you had one officer escorted you home and the other one ran after the individual who was following you? Do you believe that was
Yes, that was
him?
around March 19. Yes. Yeah, that definitely was the same guy. Yes, for sure.
Okay.
I saw his face, briefly, but enough to where I could recognize him later on. Yes, it was the same.
And
It's the same guy.
was he following you home from Vallejo or from Oakland at that time?
Vallejo. I was working that particular night. I worked at Flamingo Joe's and went to the Melody Lounge to pick up a paycheck, and that's where my coil wire got taken out of my car. And the guys that I knew from Richmond pulled a coil wire out of someone else's car, put it in mine, because they're pretty much interchangeable. And
Right.
I was able to drive home. Yes. We covered that, I believe, last week.
Yeah, and you also had an instance where he followed you home from Oakland and was pointing a laser light or like a laser sight at you from a gun, correct?
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, he followed me several times from Oakland to Antioch, where I lived. Several times
So
he
from
would be
Vallejo
behind me
to
and
Napa,
try breaking
right?
me off the road.
So from Vallejo to
What?
Napa, he followed you once, right? Was the incident
one
in
that I
Napa?
know of. I mean, he had to have followed me before in order for him to know where I lived, because he got to my house before I did on that particular night in March 1969.
Well, the instance that
I
involved the
just never,
police officers,
what?
the instance that the police officers got involved, was that from Vallejo to Napa or Vallejo to Antioch?
No, that was Vallejo to Napa.
Okay.
Back in
I just wanted to make sure I
1969.
had that straight.
Yeah.
So basically,
Sure, I
he's
know. It's
literally
very confusing.
stalking.
I'm terribly sorry.
He's stalking you obviously over a long period of time because you're living in two different places when these occurrences are happening.
Oh, yeah. Well, more than two different places. Yes. He found me several places. I had moved
Gotcha.
several times from the beginning, from Napa. Yeah.
You also had an interesting note here that you would find him dressing as a woman sometimes when he came into your work.
Oh, my story is so hard to believe. If it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you. Yes,
Well,
dressed
it's not really
dressed
about
as a woman.
believability. It's your truth. It happened to you, and nobody can discount that. And when people want to say, oh, that person's crazy or that person doesn't know what they're talking about, it's
Right.
your truth. You lived through it, not anybody else.
Oh, yes. But it was fine that they thought I was crazy, because as long as people didn't believe my story, I was safe.
Right.
And because he knew that people thought I was crazy, he was doing things on purpose to make me look crazy.
Well, and this whole
I am a
idea
little
about
crazy,
dressing
though, I
up
will
as a
admit
woman
that.
coming into your work, maybe this was his way of being able to stalk you incognito. At least he thought so. And like you
Yes.
said, you noticed something about him, even
Yes.
though he was dressed as a woman. And what was that?
Well, I didn't realize that he was a woman until the last time that I actually sat down with him at one of my tables, and because I felt sorry for him. He just seemed like a very lonely lady, and had no friends. He just seemed lonely, and so I sat down and was talking to him. He was whispering, and that was when I let him know that I got the license plate number from Robert Hernandez's car, and that my friend Adrian Martinez was the one that got the number. Well, it was shortly after that Adrian was nearly murdered. I mean, he was stabbed, disemboweled, left for dead. I mean, it was a miracle that he actually survived. I didn't see him for another year because it took him that long to recover, I believe. And when I did see Adrian a year later, he came in, I gave him a hug, and I said, Adrian, please tell me, was it the man you followed outside for me? And he said, I can't talk about it. So that was, to me, was yes, because we certainly could have said no if it definitely wasn't my guy. But I believe my guy attempted to kill him for, trying to help me.
Gotcha. Now, you also said at some point in time he left a note on a table that said Tony 1730-6.
Yeah, it's hard for me to make out the last. I can see the 3, and it looked like a 0, but it had a little curve above it to make it almost look like it could have been 36. But yeah.
Oh,
And the name
gotcha.
was
I
Tony.
see what I
It
wrote.
meant nothing to me at the time. Yeah, because I
Right?
didn't even
Right?
know Honcho was called Tony at that particular time. So yeah.
Does the 1730 or 1736 mean anything to you now?
Well, I would say January 7th, 30 or 36 could possibly be his birth date.
Gotcha.
And I've tried.
So was there hyphens?
I've tried looking for. Pardon?
Was there hyphens? Was there something that made it look like a date sequence, or were all 4 numbers just together?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
It was separated by dashes.
By hyphens. Okay. So now moving on to Robert Hernandez. Now you don't have a picture of him, but you have seen him many times as well. He's the one that we had talked about. He had been in your garage at 3 a.m. You busted him in there. So that means that this person obviously knows where you live as well and has stalked you back to your house and evidently attempted to actually come into your house. And he used to come.
I don't know if he actually tried. Because I didn't see who it was that tried to break into my house. Because I mean, there was somebody that tried to open the screen and wiggle the doorknob. I don't know for sure if that one was Hernandez or Honcho. I have no idea because nobody ever saw the face of the person. But
you saw Hernandez for sure tried to come into. Exactly. Okay. So to me, that's entering somebody's premises. I know that the garage, as far as concealed weapons are concerned, are off limits for your protection because you're not allowed to protect a garage. But your garage is still your home. And if they can make it into your garage, typically speaking, they can make it into your home.
Oh yes, I believe that they actually entered my home at one time when I wasn't here. My sons, who were teenagers at the time, had parties. I had no idea that while I was at work, they were having parties at my house. So many people entered my house and exited.
Oh.
Yeah. So he could have had somebody come in.
I showed that it was Oh, gotcha. So the people were lifting things from your house, from your personal property.
There were people that, many people. I mean, my neighbors later told me that the street would be covered with cars of people coming into my house when I was at work, because I had no idea, except that sometimes I would come home and my house would be cleaner than when I left.
Hey, that could be a bonus sometimes, as long as people aren't stealing anything. Now, so I show that Robert Hernandez, obviously it was his lookalike that you felt that was in his car that was cited, or the license plate was gotten by Adrian, right? So Robert Hernandez is the one that is associated with that situation. So you also believe that Robert Hernandez was dangerous, as well as Honcho, you believed, has actually killed people.
Oh, for sure, Honcho has killed people. I have witnesses that got away from him, yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, if the witnesses got away from him, then he didn't kill them. But knowing whether or not he killed somebody, I think, is another that's another topic. That's another thing. Anyways, you had an instance where your next door neighbor also saw a man hop your fence with a gun, and that you had been shot at through your bedroom window.
Yes. I was shot at. It was in the middle of the afternoon, probably around 2:30 in the afternoon. I didn't know that I was shot at. I heard what sounded like a rock hit my window. So he had to have a silencer on that gun, because I know what a gunshot sounds like. But this sounded more like a rock, a large rock hitting my window. Well, when I went over to the window to look, I didn't see any big hole in my window. So I thought, I had no idea what the heck it was. And it was like a day or two later, I wake up early in the morning and I hear the birds as though they were very, very close to my window. I'm thinking, gee, my hearing must be improving, because it sounds, I can really hear the birds. And that's when I noticed there was a small hole in the window and through the screen. It it frayed the screen, the bullet, because it's hot, I guess, and it frayed it. I did take a picture of that. I do have a picture of that hole that went through the screen. And so when I was outside looking at the hole, because I also shot pool, I was able to see the line, how the hole in the window was a little
trajectory.
up above the screen. So I looked through it and I thought, okay, that has to be where the bullet went. Then I go inside the house and that's where I find the hole in my bedroom walls near my television, because I was actually changing channels by hand when the sound of the rock hit the window, which of course was the bullet. And it was about the size of my pinky finger. I plastered over it, but the bullet is still inside the wall, and it apparently had to have hit a 2x4 because it did not go through the wall into the next bedroom.
Gotcha. Well, that would be interesting to take a metal detector too and see what you find. So you also think that this guy shot at you again 3 times while driving a blue Cadillac convertible with light blue canvas top.
Yes, that was in the Caldecott Tunnel. I was on my way to Alameda before going to work because my job in Oakland was right close to Alameda. I was going to do a painting job in Alameda for one of the people that worked where I worked, and I was shot at. Well, first of all, it sounded like backfires at first. The first one sounded like a backfire. Then in the middle of the tunnel, boom, another one sounded like a backfire. But it was a little more crisp, and I thought, gee whiz, that almost sounds like a gun. And so I weaved a little tiny bit in the tunnel just in case. And as I came out, the third shot rang out, and he went around me, and he was in a blue Cadillac with a white top, really, really nice looking older Cadillac. And I thought about chasing him, and then I thought, no, I had chased him just a few days before, and this was like warning shot, like, do not follow me anymore. And he took off. And,
so the stalker became the stalk, or the stalky became the stalker.
Yes.
Now you had another instance with a counterfeit ring.
That's why I say I'm a little crazy, because I went after this guy knowing that he was a dangerous person.
You also had an instance with a second individual who was implicated in another counterfeit ring, and that was a Tony Johnson from Richmond. So
yes,
one was in Vallejo, one was in Richmond, even though they're not too far off from each other. Do you think that there was any relation, or that these individuals, Don Porter and Tony Johnson, knew each other?
It very well could be. I have no idea. All I know is that the 2 counterfeit rings were very close to one another. And I mean, how many counterfeit rings could be going on in such a short period of time? I knew Tony Johnson very well. He was a nice guy before he married this Bridget Johnson, or Bridget, I don't know what her maiden name was, but it was after he became involved with Bridget that the counterfeiting happened. In fact, I was accidentally laundering $20 bills. He would come over and ask me for $20, and he needed to borrow 20. He was gambling, playing poker. And I would give him a $20 bill, and then the next morning he would come by my house and give me a brand new $20 bill, and it was over. He's done it. This went on for several weeks, until finally I realized that every single time he would give me a brand new $20 bill. And so I confronted him and said, these bills are you making these bills or something? Because they're like counterfeit bills. They're brand new. And that's when it stopped. He stopped bringing the $20 bills to me because I became wise. Well, the FBI,
busted.
The FBI was actually following him, and they probably tapped my phone and realized that, I was just some dumb blonde and didn't know what the hell I was doing, because they certainly didn't arrest me, but they did approach me and offered to give me some money to offer it to Tony to see if we couldn't come up with more of the bills, because they figured he had, more bills hidden somewhere.
And eventually he was busted.
I really do not want to be. He did get caught. And I told him, I said, I really don't want to be involved. I mean, you got him. That's good enough. I don't want to be involved in this at all. I don't know who else is involved with him. I don't want to be killed. Just leave me out of it. So I didn't have anything more to do with that.
I mean, $3,000 sounds like a pretty penny back in that day, but for the FBI to solicit anybody to be part of something that could potentially harm their life is just kind of a little bit out there. I mean, why not use anyone else? Somebody who's willing to put themselves on that front line and stick their necks out there for the greater good or to bust a criminal. Why ask a civilian? I mean, that's just crazy.
It was probably they knew that I knew him well enough that I figured that they thought that, he would feel safe, taking
Right.
$3,000 from me.
I
rather
get
than
why
some
they
stranger
asked.
is what I assume.
Right. So they offered you
I
3,000 or they wanted you to take 3,000 to him?
They wanted me to exchange the 3,000 for, more of the counterfeit money.
Well, but that would almost
In other
implicate the
words, give
fact
them what?
that would almost mean that you would have to be completely aware of the fact that he was counterfeiting money, which you were not aware of. Your thought was just based on the fact that you kept getting crisp, clean, new $20 bills, and that just kept occurring over and over again. But if you had approached him and said you knew that he was counterfeiting money, and now I want you to exchange $3,000 for counterfeit money, I mean, who wants to give away? I think that he would have smelled a rat, because who wants to give away $3,000 worth of perfectly good money for fake money? I mean, who wants to chance that?
Yeah, I guess the FBI, that's the way they work. I don't know, but it would have been giving him 3,000 for like 10,000 of counterfeit.
Oh, I see what it is. So you're going to make out because you're going to be given, multiple. You're going to be given more than what you gave him in good money. Gotcha.
Yes.
All right. Well, so,
Yes.
I mean, honestly speaking, here you are in this, crazy time of the late 60s. You are not only dating cops, but you are implicated in and surrounding yourself by people who are in counterfeit rings. I mean, I think you would be a prime target for anybody who would want to intimidate you to keep your mouth shut. Is that how you feel?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And even though I believe that they thought I knew more than I knew, because I didn't know anything other than two of the guys came from Chicago with the plates. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. He didn't give me any names. Don Porter didn't talk about it other than the two guys from Chicago is all I knew.
So, and if
No
Darlene
names.
was talking about it, and let's say that was a theory that she was in the middle of all of this, and she was talking about it and spending the money and doing things that were out of character for somebody who worked as a waitress on the low level income that she actually earned, and they found her to be a problem and killed her, then obviously their intimidation tactics and pressing you would be also to send that same message, don't talk about it. You know nothing, keep your mouth shut and you'll be safe kind of thing. Well, I did bring up this. Sorry, go ahead.
Your voice just cut out. I'm watching you on the screen. I can see your mouth moving, and then the words come later.
That reminded me of something funny. Anyways, I did pull up the next slide in the presentation, which was some evidence or some belongings that you had found in the back of your car. At one point, you had driven your car to the Solano or Stalked house, or your husband had driven the car to the Stalked house. You picked up a ride and got yourself there. And after picking up the vehicle to go do some errands, you found a mess of things in the back seat of your car, correct?
I found the things as I approached the car with my neighbor. I had my 8-month-old baby with me, and I needed to go to the store to get things to make a birthday cake for my son that was turning 12. And I needed to pick up some things for the party, is why it was important that I got my car that day. It's the only reason that I remember the date. Otherwise, there's no way that I could have remembered it. And so when we approached the car and I opened, because the windows were down, it was a warm day. It was like September 28th or 29th.
Ooh, and back in the day when you could actually leave your car windows down without your car getting stolen.
Yeah,
you can't do that anymore.
That kind of a problem back then, apparently.
Right.
Well, it wasn't me that left the windows down. It was my husband that had the windows down. He went into the Stalked house to have drinks and roll dice with his friends, and I didn't have another car, so I needed to use that one to get to the store and get all the things for the party. And as we approached the car, I could see in the back seat all this stuff. There's cloth laying across the back seat, and some things stacked very neatly behind the driver's seat, and then this wadded up ball of paper behind the passenger's seat on the floor. And so I picked up the cloth and I said, "Oh my God, what is this?" And I thought it was an early Halloween costume, and I thought that the logo on it looked Chinese to me. I don't know why, but it looked Chinese to me. And we kind of laughed, and I said, "Well, I could use this, make a skirt out of it, and be a geisha girl or something." And we thought that was funny. I don't think it's funny now, but at that time we kind of chuckled. Yeah. And so when I got home, I threw away. I opened up the wadded paper, and it was a paper bag that was painted black, and it had an odor to it. So whatever made it black had an odor. It could have been rancid ink or shoe polish. I have no idea what it was, but it had an odor, and I threw that in the garbage can as soon as I got home. But the cloth, because I like to sew, I have all kinds of little hobbies that I do with cloth. I folded it and saved it. Whether or not I washed it, I have no idea. But
and you think that still exists? You think that still exists somewhere,
Pardon?
Right? Like you think that cloth still exists somewhere?
Somewhere, yes. Because I did not throw it away. Once I realized after reading Grace Smith's book and saw the picture drawn, it was very similar to what I had. I thought, oh my God, this might be something that Napa needs to have. And
well, unfortunately,
I had friends help me.
The picture that Robert Graysmith drew of that hood in his book was his own interpretation of it. It was not what was reported. So I can get somebody seeing his book and believing that he is the almighty truth teller, because he acts as though he's obtained all of his information from known sources, but he has clearly made up stories and also perpetuated his own theories in regards to his own suspect. So I could understand how that paper sack being found in the back of your car and you later realizing, but I had never heard that the hood was a two-part or a two-piece costume, that it has always been described or explained as an executioner's hood that fell down to the shoulders, and then the bib part of it actually went almost down to the waist. So we were talking about a single piece here, but I could see how you could make that relation for sure.
Yeah, well, there's several reports. Actually, there's more than one or two reports that Hartnell had described. And
right, but I've already cleared
to the shoulders.
Right, and I've already covered that in the presentation. It does not state that the bib part. It does not. It states that the bib part went down, but that bib part was not explained as a separate or second piece. But I don't want to cover that because we've got too much information on you right now. I just want to say that yours is a two-piece, and that is something that you only related after reading Grace Smith's book, who gave his own interpretation and his own false, I'm going to say false, because by every record that I read, that none of them could have been square on top. And I know that you and I have talked about this in detail. Material would not fall that way. So we know that it could not have stood up like his.
For material. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
The only way that it could have been would have been if it was like a paper sack, something stiff. Yes.
Right. And that's not something that was described. So I do note that you also found in the back seat a modern dictionary that you believe has some blood. And I think I see it right here. Am I circling the right area?
Oh, yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes,
and then
there's a couple more. There's a couple more up above it, but yes, that's the main one.
There.
Yes.
And then there's this little prayer book that you were talking about, the Catholic prayer book that you thought might possibly be Sherry Jo Bates because she was Catholic. And then this particular watch right here that you had found, nobody has any idea who this belongs to, but this was found in the back seat with these belongings as well. Correct?
Yes. And because most of these things tie into, because it happened right after Berryessa, I'm assuming that it could be Cecilia Shepard's watch, which I would like Napa to test it for her DNA. There wasn't any large.
Isn't there anybody who could identify? Is there anybody that would have known?
Yes, I would think that Hartnell would have noticed it, And I did try contacting him. I also asked if there was a red plastic heart necklace, if she had that.
Oh, I haven't get. Let me get to that. I haven't got to that yet. I'm all, hold on.
Right.
You're ahead of me. But there is this other thing that you found in your car at the same time, and it looks like this little butler standing over a table as if he's waiting in a restaurant. And it says, "My little dream girl, I wonder, dear, if you can feel half as much for me as I do for you. You who have such a tender, loving heart for all the world, while I have so few I really care for and have just so much more deep, true love for you. A love for you which takes root in the very center of my being. Love, why are you so far away from me when I want you with every breath I draw? I have just been out in the garden as my longing for you grew so intense that it was unendurable. Do you suppose, heart of heart, that you can send me a line before I leave? Every word you write is treasured in my heart. So write soon to your ardent adorer." And it has something underneath it that says parasol flirtation, and it tells you about the way you carry your parasol will indicate whether or not you're interested in someone. I do find that interesting because that you do seem to have a true admirer who is not necessarily stalking you, but it appears as though they are trying to reach out in a way that they hope you just recognize, rather than just coming out and saying it. "Hey, Sandy, I like you. You're my friend. And I want to be more than friends." They're sending you these secret little notes. But it seems to me that that's quite a bit different from the attention that you're receiving from Honcho and from Robert Hernandez, which seems to be intimidation and scare tactics. And I only say this because as a document examiner, I handle stalking cases and anonymous writings, and you can tell or get the gist from the message that's being sent whether the person is just really in love with that individual and wants to be with them but can't because that person doesn't want to reciprocate the love, versus the fact that they are doing it out of intent for harm. So I look at, you had, like I said, you were a hot mama. You've got lots of people who are coming at you from different directions, some who want to be with you, some who want to protest their love without telling you who they are, and then you have these other people who are intimidating you. And one of the things I think that comes to mind when I look at your case is that had you been stalked by the Zodiac killer, Sandy, I don't think you'd be with us right now. If you found yourself in the same position as Darlene Ferrin, who, if she was part of all of this, talking too much, spending too much money, and this is the theory why she was killed, that I think that if you were in any way going to harm, hurt, or cause the Zodiac to be caught by the police, or if he was in fear of that, I think he would have just killed you. Don't you?
Yes. Oh, that makes absolute perfect sense. Yes. But one of the conversations that I had with him after I took his picture, because before then he wasn't trying to kill me as far as I knew. It was just trying to scare me.
Who are we talking about right now?
Afraid.
You're talking about Honcho?
I'm assuming because I just received a phone call. Sometimes it would be a one-way conversation, but he would just be breathing, and I would sometimes have a conversation with this person breathing. So I can't say for sure it was Honcho, Hernandez, or whoever. But whoever it was, I said to him, "I am not afraid to die if it means that you will be caught. And I've given your picture to every police agency in California, and I've got documentation. They know who you are. They know where you work. Anything happens to me, you will be caught. And I'm not afraid to be killed if it means you being caught."
Yeah, but see, I don't think he would have
after that.
Yeah, I don't think that he would have let it go that far. And I don't think that the Zodiac could have been intimidated by something like that, because again, proving that the Zodiac did anything, we can see now today that proving that the Zodiac did anything is very, very slim chances of anything based on any evidence that was left behind. Yeah. Right. So I've only got about 9 minutes left with you, so I'm going to rush through a couple things. You did find you did have a gentleman who did your horoscope, and in that he had dropped off this particular message that says, "Secretive, mysterious, extremely brilliant. You are active, hardworking, and aggressive. You are sensitive to the needs of others. You are a quiet fighter. You are a slow starter, but once you get going, look out." And you thought that this had some reminiscence of the Zodiac's writing. So when you kept it, did you know? I mean, so this is the late 80s. So you're already involved in the Zodiac case. You already have been, thinking that that Honcho might have been the Zodiac, or that Robert Hernandez could have been the Zodiac. So you kept a hold of this because you felt that this was expressive of the Zodiac's handwriting. Correct?
No. I kept it because I was flattered by being called brilliant.
Okay, so then how did it get involved in this?
I saved it because I was flattered by it. It was later that I realized the handwriting looked similar. Yeah, but it was later that I realized the handwriting was similar. Okay.
Gotcha. And I do see some differences, like the backward Y's and things like that were not things that we saw. I'm going to be doing a handwriting examination on this, and as a comparison. I did see some other things actually in the writing that was definitely different, like the letter H's and things like that. And then you also had this one that looks like a rundown. Somebody might have been watching a show on TV and took down some of the characteristics that Robert Graysmith relayed in his book. And that's where they talked about the white Chevy Impala being something that was witnessed. At what crime scene was the Chevy Impala witnessed at?
There was a mention about a white Chevy being the car that was following Darlene and seen it parked across the street. And then one person thought that they saw a Chevy Impala at the Lake Herman Road.
Gotcha.
Someone else said it was a brown car.
And so I'm interested in that because... Right. So Mike Mageau obviously was one of the individuals who survived, and he was with Darlene Ferrin, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so and I'm interested in the fact that this particular message states that the man was stocky, 5'10", 220 pounds. Of course, it does say 30 years old, which we find that Mageau was not a good judge of character when it came to height or age. But I was more interested in the 5'10" part because Mike Mageau actually reported 5'8". So I'm wondering how that information got changed, how it ends up in the report that it then says 5'8" instead of 5'10", but the years that Mageau stated was, I think he said 26 to 30 years of age, but how that mix and match has already started to change as early on as Robert Graysmith's book. Either way, those two communications, one looks like the person was impressed with you. The other one, this one was left by, you believe Honcho was the one that wrote it because your girlfriend or your friend who was a bartender, Linda at Lions, watched him write it, and then he handed it to her to give to you, correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct. Yes.
Okay. So on the next slide, I have another napkin that was pushed in front of you as a man walked out the door. You didn't catch the look of him, but it says, "Why am I afraid to tell you who I am?" This message we've talked about because I found that you have many of the characteristics of the writing in this particular message. We are at the 5-minute mark, so I'm just letting you know.
Yes, I've been told by more than one person that my writing and Zodiac's were similar, or the writer, whoever was writing me, and my handwriting are very, very similar. Yes.
Well, and we talked about that too. It's kind of a psychological thing that occurs when you study handwriting for any amount of time. I myself, as a document examiner, when I'm in a heavy case with a lot of writing that I have to study for any length of time, I actually will find myself making some of those characteristics or doing those characteristics at some point after the examination is complete. And I will look down and go, wow, I've never done that before. And I just did that. And I found that in that person's handwriting. So there is a psychological aspect about you imaging these things with your brain, because handwriting is brain writing, not handwriting. So when your brain images it and sends that impulse to your hand, you can actually start to adopt some of these other characteristics. And if it's an easier way of writing than you have written before, your brain will actually like it, because anything that you can speed through in writing is less tedious on the brain. So I do find that's interesting. People have said that, but it could be because you have studied this case so much. Now this is
you're exactly correct. And I noticed it yesterday when I was writing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm writing just like him. Yes.
Okay. I almost said I only got like 4 minutes. Here's that Cecilia heart,
Oh,
the
goodness.
transparent red heart that said Cecilia, albeit it is spelled with an I instead of an E, which is an incorrect spelling. That would lead me to believe that it probably wasn't Cecilia Shepard's, because I know myself, I can never find anything with my name on it. And when I find one that is a different version of a spelling of my name, I do not buy it. It's not me. I'm not going to wear it. I'm not going to have it. But that was just my take. And then here's a 22 bullet that you found put on your front porch, and it says many years ago, your best friend was killed with a 22. They said it was a suicide, but you have your own theory about that, but that's a different case. And that happened in the late 80s. And I think here.
Oh, well, no, that was in the 70s. That was 1970.
No, I'm talking about when the bullet was found, not her.
Oh. Yeah,
I'm sticking to you right now. We've only got like 3 minutes left. Now, you have no idea where this map came from, but we did discuss the fact that in this map has 5 capital letters that are being used in the middle of lowercase printing, which happens to be, like you said, as coincidentally as it is, those 5 letters you also use as capital letters in your own writing. So I pointed that out, and that makes me now want to go back and do a complete examination and see what is going on there. But it is interesting to note that the symbols on here are not the Zodiac site symbols, nor do they appear to be like the Zodiac writes. When I looked at your Zodiac site symbol, yours is more like the Earth symbol, where the crossbars stay inside the actual circle, with an occasional exit to the left on the horizontal crossbar, which is identical to the way you make yours. So I had, for obvious reasons, based on the fact that these little circles are not working out the way the Zodiac executed them, and some other aspects of the handwriting, had excluded this. But I'm going to throw it back in, and I'm going to break all these letters down just like I did with the Zodiac case and see what we've got. We decided that, okay, so I'm going to skip the Pookie kite, because as we talked about, that is somebody else's handwriting altogether. That's a very immature or a self-absorbed person's handwriting with that large middle zone, more childlike than anything. So I skipped that, but we did put up the picture. I got 1 minute. We did put up the picture of the Zodiac symbol that was found in the backyard between the 4 properties that you could see from your backyard. And you thought that might have been somebody attempting to taunt you. You have also been sent garrets, it looks like, these metal garrets or metal ring garrets that you had received. And then you found it on your way to work at some. What's that?
I said, yes, those were very scary.
Yeah. And you got 2 of them, not just 1, but 2, right? Or is that the same picture?
Yes. No, it's two separate ones.
Gotcha.
And
then you got this, you found this on a wall, obviously, on your way to work or something like that, saying Psycho is back. And of course, that symbol again is off, doesn't match the Zodiacs. People don't really realize it. They just image something in Vallejo. Here's another letter from
Vallejo when I was. Pardon?
Said, here's another letter from an admirer. I wouldn't be shocked if this letter, based on the language of it, wasn't similar to the one that you found in the back seat of your car. Because again, you have somebody who's admiring you, but won't come out and tell you, and they hope that you reciprocate. We did pass up that. We talked about that. You did receive back in the mail, after distributing pictures of Honcho to several prostitutes, telling them not to get into the car. At some point in time in 91, you would receive this picture back in an envelope to your house, which is strange, because you didn't give anybody any information in order to contact you. You were just telling them to beware. And so who sent this to you is a huge question. You also found this latex glove that had the fingers drawn with faces, the middle one being one with a mustache and well, that looks to me like a smile, but I'm not sure. But a mustache, and you thought that was relative to one of your children who actually had that. And then, of course, you received another correspondence, it looks like, in 94 that says, are you a victim of a stalker? So as if your stalker is even taunting you with the fact that you are being a victim of a stalker, and then sending you things anonymously. Oh, gosh. And we have some pictures.
I thought was kind of interesting on the top.
Right.
To do with something that was
there's
also
some relation to that. Exactly. And then we had some pictures that you had taken of people who had sat on street corners or you believed had followed you and were stalking you at that time as well. So last but not least was just this representation of the handwriting that you had done. As a comparison, you do believe that the Ramsey note is related to the Zodiac killer's handwriting. And then this was your suspect, Robert Hernandez's handwriting, which I do see some differences and some reasons to exclude him, but I'm going to complete that examination as well for you. And I think that we're going to have to drop off there at this point because we have definitely gone 1 minute over. I plan on having you back, though. We'll talk some more. I really appreciate it and enjoy your company. And you are an amazing researcher who has done a lot of work in this case. So I think that everybody can learn something from you because you've been around as long as this case has. Sandy, thank you so much for being with me today, and I'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a great weekend and take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.